Hey beautiful people, my name's Kristen. Thank you for tuning into my channel, hearing about things that I am currently reading and things I've read in the past couple weeks that I just want to share some reviews. And so currently reading real quick, I am in a Wheel of Time book. I am in the fourth book in the Dune series, and I am reading my first Ruta Sepsi's Salt to the Sea with the lovely Gemma at Gemma Books. And all of these are in process, moving along, and I will come with these shortly. I am behind in my reading. I am. I have 3 that I technically started in Miserable May and actually finished this month instead, but they are good, and I am wanting to share them with you because you do not have to wait till Miserable May to read them. You can read them anytime. So the first one's A Little Life. This is Hanyan Yarn-Gahara. This book has been talked a lot about, a lot on BookTube, and a lot of hype and a lot of positive reviews, and I am just going to add that I think it was worthy of the hype and worthy of getting to. It is a fairly large book, around 800 pages. You could also do this for like a March of a Mammoth book. But this story is beautifully, beautifully told as a in-depth character, almost study of coming of age of 4 young men who are in and out of each other's lives. They are roommates at different points in the story. They have very different backgrounds, different, experiences of life that are just really helping one another through the hardships. And one of the central characters is Jude, that we hear the least about as far as a background story and character building, but we're given these glimpses and this foreshadowing, and you know that there has been a very hard, very tragic life, and all these 3 friends kind of rally around him to love on him and try to help him in life, not ask too many questions, but they all want to know, what is going on, kind of thing. And us as a reader, as we go back in time, we get more and more information and life plays out. And it is a difficult story and a struggle story, and has a lot of abuse, a lot of minor sexuality and taking advantage of, children and the vulnerable population. And so it is a hard book to read, but it is written very poignantly and very respectfully, I feel. And if you are willing to go along with that kind of painful journey, I think it's a beautiful ride, in just the sense of feeling like in the midst of deep hardships and tragedy, there are these moments of beauty, these moments of hope, these beauty of a little life, of just holding on to the goodness despite life's hard struggles. So that is my review of that, finally reading it. I also got to The Lost Metal, Brandon Sanderson. This is the last in the second era Mistborn trilogy, or it's 2 trilogies, so this is the last in the whole series. And it is I agree with all the reviewers that say this is a very satisfying ending. If you liked like Picard or some of those kind of shows where all the past characters kind of start coming back and doing those little cameos, right? You have all the nostalgic kind of, hey, I came back in this form of whatever, or this ancestor, or what. This book is that kind of style. And his humor and his characters in this book I particularly liked, and so it was a Wild West kind of ride through a magical system of the Cosmere, and I totally appreciated it. I also finished on audiobook The Hand of Ethelbertha. This is the Thomas Hardy miserable book, and what's funny is that this book, actually, when I started reading the backstory on it, this is This is known as his comedy. This is known as not his miserable book, which I actually find hysterical because it's predominantly a romance story. And it's this woman who has kind of questionable backgrounds and backgrounds where society's not supposed to think that she's supposed to get ahead or be accepted, but she manages it to by marrying into wealth and status very young, and then immediately becoming a widow, but being taken up under the wing by her ex-husband or her deceased husband's mother. And so she is brought up, but she hides perpetually her background. And in the true Thomas Hardy fashion, you know, things keep getting revealed or people don't know what's really going on here or there. And it's that kind of, oh, the cat comes in the room just as the mouse is walking out kind of situation. And it's funny, it's clever. She ends up like with many suitors, many storylines that get very convoluted and dramatic. And then her sister's falling in love with the man that loves her the most, and it's just drama in true Hardy style. So it's still miserable, y'all. It's still like romantically, painfully struggling misery in that sense. I mean, there's not as much like death and destruction as Hardy normally puts in there. So in that sense, his good friend who knew Thomas Hardy, another author, George Jisling, put the name here, he said that because it's a comedy and not so miserable, surely this is the least good Hardy book out there. Which is funny, but I loved it. I loved it, y'all. I think if you are wanting to take on some Hardy, that this one actually is a fun ride. I think it's a fun ride, and I think it still has some misery. So not near as misery as, you know, Jude and Tess and all those, but I still say it is spot on Thomas Hardy, and give it a thumbs up. For my classic for June, I read Plato's The Republic for Ancient Month, and I had never read any Plato, and I anticipated that I would be a little wiser, that I would pick up on some of his philosophies and sayings, and, you know, I'd be smarter for having read it. And it's not that difficult of a read. There were a few passages in here that I would be like, what does that mean? Or a couple times the actual logic, I don't think it was logical. You know, it'd be like, oh, surely you've seen this person cross this line, and when this person does this, that always means that they're, you know, wanting to get to the other side kind of thing. It's like, well, does it mean they wanted to get to the other side? But the person in the dialogue with Socrates would be like, oh, sure, of course that's true. And so it's like, okay. And overall, you find out very quickly that Plato did not have great respect for women or equal society. He had very weird ideas, y'all. So I do feel like I learned a lot and that it was very interesting, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. But I am not sorry that I took this on and read it. And one of the most interesting kind of tidbits from this was the fact that even though this whole book is about the Republic, about the government, and about the way to establish the best ruling country, platform, whatever, really, instead of being about that, many historians will say that Plato was actually writing this as a protest to the death of Socrates, right? Socrates was put to death for philosophy, and here he is using philosophy to kind of debate what is justice, what is correctness, what is the powers that rule society correctly. How do you set up a perfect system, a just system, when really what he's saying, I think in part, is that the system I'm currently in is not so just. So really clever, really interesting. And even though this looks big and difficult to read, I read this in less than a week, and I did, from the same library sale have the Spark Notes, so I would read a section and then read this, and so that gave an even deeper flavor to it, and that was helpful. But it's not that I was always so lost in reading this. So I totally encourage you to look at it, pick it up, dive into it if that's something that interests you. So those are the books that I have read in the current month so far. What have you been reading and picking up? I finally finished off all my Misery May. I don't know that I'm going to get to my whole June TBR, but fear not, I will slide it right on into July and we'll just keep going, y'all. I hope everybody's summer is going well and smashing and beautiful, and I appreciate you stopping by. Take care, y'all.